Thorgrim's warriors to the Irish in the pre-dawn hours before battle. Seahammer had been left behind only because Otar's brother, Kiashtan, who had turned against him, had cut a hole in her to stop Otar stealing her as well. Thorgrim and the handful of men who had escaped the butchery that the Irish had doled out found her run up on the riverbank and half sunk. Then the Irish had found her too, 20 of them, mounted warriors, too many for the Northmen to take on. As Thorgrim and his men watched from the cover of the trees, the Irish made ready to burn her where she lay. That, for Thorgrim, was too much. He was willing to die. Indeed, he preferred to die before suffering such a final humiliation. In the end, the sacrifice was not necessary. Thorgrim's prisoner, his male prisoner, was an Irish warrior named Louis, and Thorgrim sent him to warn the soldiers off, to tell them there were 60 Norse warriors coming upriver. Thorgrim then made a show of force with the few men he had, and that had been enough to make the Irish ride off, but he knew they would not be gone for long, and they would not come back alone. With the sound of the horses' hooves growing fainter, Thorgrim led his men back aboard Seahammer. She was badly holed, true, but she did not have to voyage far, just a ways beyond where they might expect the Irish to come looking for them. "We need something to stop up that hole," Thorgrim said, after peering at the damage through the clear water that flooded the hull. He straightened and looked around. There were dead men all over the shore. Most were his own men, those who had been left behind to guard the ships. They had given their lives to that effort, but they had not been enough to stop the near 300 men under Otar's command. Not all of the dead, however, were Thorgrim's men. "Find some of Otar's dead," Thorgrim ordered. "Strip off their tunics and bring them to me. Just cut them away." Thorgrim was tormented by the memory of the men who had died because of his misjudgment. He was tormented by the fact that he had no time to give them a proper funeral. He could not stand the thought of leaving their corpses, naked and bloating, for the ravens and the wolves to feast on. The others nodded their understanding and climbed back ashore to find the corpses from which to strip clothing. They shuffled, they limped, they moved with obvious pain. They had all been wounded in some manner during the fight. A slash from a sword, a wound from the spear of a mounted warrior, a hard kick from a horse. They were wounded, but they could still move, and that was why they lived. Those too wounded to run had been hacked down on the field. One by one the men returned with bundles of cloth that just that morning had clothed living warriors, and Thorgrim knew he had another decision to make, a harder one. He took the tunics and once again ran his eyes over the shore. His men had died fighting. The choosers of the slain had been among them already. They must have been. It had been hours. What need had they of weapons? They were in the corpse hall now, or they never would be. "I need 4 of you to find helmets to bail the ship," Thorgrim said, gesturing toward the river water that had flooded into Seahammer, a foot high at its deepest. "The rest of you, gather up all the swords, shields, mail, any weapons you can find, and get them on board." "From Otar's men, Lord Thorgrim," Ulf said, "or from all the dead men?" "From all the men. They have no use for weapons now," Thorgrim said, and his tone did not welcome discussion. "And do not call me lord," he said. "I'm not the lord of anything, not a dung heap, nothing." "I am not a lord, because I am a fool," he thought. Once again the men climbed over the side and spread out along the shore. Starry Deathless limped after them, his wound graver than the others, and greatly aggravated by the day's events. He had been there when Otar's men arrived, had taken up arms despite his agony, and fought until he had collapsed. But for Starry, the torment of having to stay still was worse than the torment of having to move. "Starry," Thorgrim said, as Starry was swinging a leg painfully over the ship's side. "Stay aboard. Listen for the riders coming back. None of the others will hear them before you do." Starry nodded. His hearing was legendary. He brought his leg back inboard and climbed up onto the foredeck, leaning against the tall stem. The elegant sweeping post terminated 10 feet above the carving of an angry, vengeful Thor looking out past the bow. Now Thor and Starry together faced the land beyond the riverbank, alert for any sound of danger. Thorgrim draped the cut tunics over the sheer strake and kneeled down into the water in the ship's bottom. He took up one of the tunics and shoved it into the hole, jamming it as tightly into the corner as he could.